Welcome back, everyone. We have Amnesiasc versus Fr0zen coming right up for you guys. No messing around here. This match is going to be fantastic. Obviously, I'm Raven, joined by Sottle, of course. Looking forward to this one, mate.
Cannot wait. Possibly the biggest game that we have in this top 8. It's a Swiss rematch. It's a match between two of North America's most high-profile players, and it's part of the big story that we've been telling you about the whole way through. This is Amnesiasc's personal need for redemption, his unfinished business that he feels he has with the World Championship of Hearthstone.
Yeah, definitely excited to see what happens here, and also for Fr0zen as well. On Luminosity, playing in cups like Trinity Series, for example, he's been doing great. He had a second place at DreamHack as well. So, he's definitely one to watch. It's not like he's any form of pushover. He is currently 0-1 down to Amnesiasc in this tournament so far in the previous Swiss portion, but this is fresh. None of the Swiss matters anymore. This match, this winner will go to the Bahamas, and it is kicking off here with the Mage versus the Aggro Rogue.
Yep, and a quick breakdown of the way these lineups interact just very quickly. Amnesiasc bringing the quad aggro strategy, which was the most popular lineup coming into this tournament. 19% of players brought it. Amnesiasc, the only one in top 8, the only one still standing. Fr0zen, on the other hand, second most popular strategy. 2 pirate decks, 2 Reno decks. Slight wrinkle because he's got some Murlocs in his pirate deck, but
still, the most unique strategy.
That's the core strategy, and 4 out of the top 8 have actually brought that kind of lineup. So Fr0zen's lineup proving to be the most successful through this tournament so far.
Yeah, and also, there's an added layer of pressure for these guys because both of them are playing from the same venue in Fairfax, Virginia as well. So once this match is over, they can probably see each other basically straight away. So we might have to get some security on site just to make sure nothing crazy happens afterwards. But definitely adds a new layer, doesn't it, when your opponent's just sat probably a few feet away from you.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how much eye contact they can potentially have with each other, because Amnesiasc has talked before about how he does try and use that if he can, try and use every tool available to him, and if he can put bad reads in his opponent's mind or try and distract them in any way, he will use that. But to the matchup now, fairly slow start, as most Reno Mage games will tend to have. Amnesiasc trying to get off to a flyer with the aggro rogue that we've seen being used to mixed success so far this tournament. Drawing patches obviously less than ideal. You guys are sick of hearing that by now. You all know it. The card you do not want to draw, and Fr0zen has the perfect Volcanic Potion opening to this potential aggression from Amnesiasc.
Yeah, this is how different this matchup is versus the Miracle Rogue, right? Volcanic Potion actually kills a hell of a lot of minions that this deck even plays against, so this is very, very clean. And well, there's another Volcanic Potion as well. Not going to be too great since it does damage your own minions. It's going to be an odd happenstance if Amnesiasc actually manages to play that to effect in this game, so it's definitely a strange one. Tomb Pillager on 4 might be exactly what Amnesiasc needs, though, to try and recover that sort of, the slow stumbling beginnings there.
Yep, Coin Burglary Bully being picked up here. Great answer to the Rogue. And just wondering, both players do seem very focused, just keeping an eye on it. Again, they are in the exact same location, so I wonder if there is any interaction we'll see between the two players as we see this develop. But Amnesiasc's record there, scraping through the Swiss on tiebreakers, keeping his dream alive by the narrowest of margins, 5-2. Lost to Watt in that game that we saw on stream with the triple Reno lineup, and lost to Dr. Jikininki as well, another member of the top 8. That's the first time I've had to try that this weekend.
You've been practicing that backstage, just so everyone's aware. That was not just off their cuff. But yeah, he's had it's a story of the whole Swiss, actually. Some insane matches from a mixture of players we're aware of and ones we're kind of discovering through this tournament. Kazakus off the top there for Fr0zen is definitely going to open up a lot of options. And I'm pretty sure in this matchup, you do not wait for the brand Kazakus value here.
Yeah, that seems like a plan that's going to get you murdered very, very soon. But Fr0zen just kind of lacking in some stability options here. Kazakus can help him pick up some much-needed armor potential, but he doesn't have the healing, he doesn't have the taunts, and of course he doesn't have the Reno Jackson available to him. All of the tools that he's going to need to stave off some of this consistent damage from Amnesiasc. But Amnesiasc, if he doesn't draw more gas here, his hand is starting to run a little bit dry. Squire not really what he's looking for, so we might might see his last big minion push this turn, and then he's just trusting his deck. This is something Amnesiasc has talked about many, many times before as well, is you don't just play Hearthstone with the cards in your hand, you are playing with the 30 cards in your deck, and you have to plan for that accordingly. That's what this aggro rogue is all about. You set up positions with early board presence, you just trust that damage is going to come out of your deck after that.
Yeah, you pretty much have to in a lot of situations, especially with an aggressive deck like this. But going back to Fr0zen's turn, I do actually like the play of just playing Bran Ooze. Obviously, he doesn't gain any extra value from the Ooze with the Bran, but it does put a lot of bodies on the board, and aggro rogue doesn't really run any form of AoE to deal with these minions. And when you're the aggressor and your opponent just has the board quite convincingly, it is very difficult to make the rest of the game work, especially as rogue, which, you know, other than like some weird sort of shadow step combinations, doesn't have the raw power of Pirate Warrior, for example.
The other thing this does is puts the big problem of the Bran on the board, and if Amnesiasc chooses not to answer the Bran, which he's kind of within his rights to do as the aggressive deck, you're allowed to take that risk when you are pushing through aggression, then suddenly Fr0zen could go straight into the Kazakus and get that Bran Kazakus value we were talking about. And there wouldn't be value in terms of two big greedy potions. He could, for example, take a 1-mana potion to try and react immediately, and then still keep another big potion for later on.
Maybe even 2 1-mana potions for just, you know, the sort of quick returns there. But we've talked a lot about this aggro rogue, but we can, I think we have a few words from Amnesiasc on what he thinks about the deck.
I have a soft spot for aggro rogue. It was all just about efficient damage. It's really where I learned how to set up lethal over multiple turns, where I learned to just start counting my damage early, when to play for board, when it was important to draw. It taught me a lot of fundamentals.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he's been doing, working out what kind of damage he can potentially get out there. And what we did see just during that piece was the Kazakus potion played, just to pop a shield and gain some armor at this point.
Yep. The rest of his hand is just looking so expensive that, you know, even if he took that 1-mana potion and held onto it, he's got 3 7-mana cards that he'll be playing. So next turn, he's almost committed to playing a 7, which means that there'd be no room even to just work in a 1-mana potion. So just plays it immediately, even though it wasn't great value on the board, just to get that work done in terms of the healing, the gaining armor.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking of 7 plays, oh, okay.
Ooh, hi.
Good timing.
Why, hello there.
Solia. I was going to say that speaking of 7 plays, there might actually be an option here to just Nova Ping and set up for the following turns and just take a step back from damage. The problem with that play is you can only really develop the Thanos, which will probably get hit off by the weapon, but maybe Fr0zen's okay with that. You know, it soaks 1 damage at the end of the day and draws a card as well. Solia might change that a little bit, but if you use Solia and, you know, Flame Strike, the 1-1 still survives as well. So 1-1 doesn't sound too scary, but when there are potential Cold Bloods drawn, it can actually stack up to a lot of damage.
The more I look at it, the Frost Nova Ping Blood Mage play actually looks quite viable, because there's not a single minion in Amnesiasc's deck, apart from the Divine Shields, that would not die to a Flame Strike the next turn. So he can force himself to get additional value. In this case, of course, the Drake would come down. He's doing the same thing here with the Ink Master. Ink Master Solia comes down, allows the Frost Nova to be played for free, and now this essentially just creates the same effect. It says, hey, you have to play into this next turn, you're probably not going to remove my 5/5, because that's just such a huge damage investment for the aggro deck to make into me, and then I just have the Flame Strike follow up anyway.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's different about this is now he kind of has to attack with the Solia into a minion, whereas if he did it the other way around, Thanos would have been traded into with the weapon, and then he plays Solia Flame Strike, and then has a fresh Solia for the turn after, onto an empty board.
And he would have already made the ping on the Argent
Exactly,
Spire as
yeah. So it might have actually worked out better if he'd done it the other way, but by no means is he in a, you know, completely terrible spot with this clear. Just frustrating for him that I'm pretty sure he will want to trade into this 1-1 here.
Yeah, I mean, hands empty, he knows, I'm sure Fr0zen will have kept track that that card in hand is a coin. So by trading into the 1-1, the primary thing that you're really playing around, I mean, of course, you're playing around 1 damage. That's relevant. You're at 10. You don't want to take the 1, but the big thing you're playing around is Cold Blood. You just don't want Cold Blood targets to be left on the board. So maybe Fr0zen could make a push there, especially since he's backing it up with damage, but still, just that 1 being taken off the board is relevant to his position.
One of my favorite cards, Courier comes down, snap into a Kazakus, and, you know, I imagine we are going to see, there we go, 1-mana potion, no doubt about it. And the armor gain is an option. I imagine that was a snap pick, because why the hell not at this point? 4 armor, random demon.
Going for the Jirax's high roll potential, I imagine. Oh my god, he nails it.
Oh my god, that's actually huge, because Amnesiasc, you know, we was discussing earlier, counting damage, damage potential, how much more do I need to end this game? And the Kazakus into the potion, into the Jiraxxus changes everything. And that is a lot of events to really line up. The stars did align to a certain extent for Fr0zen there. He can just boost himself out of range.
Is it even going to be a factor, though? There's 10 damage on board right now. Fireland's Portal Frost plus Frostbolt is the 8 extra he needs, so he's actually just got the lethal set up. Jiraxxus was the security he needed if Amnesiasc was able to reduce some of the pressure, but in the end, he didn't need it. Fr0zen, very well played first game with a less than perfect draw with the Reno Mage. He got a great Volcanic Potion early on, but really did miss some of those power cards. But the second Kazakus off Cabal Courier definitely helps.
Yeah, and as we said, although, you know, we got very excited about the Jiraxxus pickup there because, you know, if Fr0zen couldn't quite finish that game, which Reno Mage quite often doesn't just have the burst that early on demand, then, you know, Jiraxxus actually would have changed everything. We could see that Amnesiasc only had Leroy effectively for damage. The Shaku was obviously on board at that point, but when you need, like, okay, it's how many weapon attacks do I need plus Leroy to kill him? And then Jiraxxus comes down, you're like, oh, well, great, Leroy's probably dead at this point, and now my opponent's back up to 15. So that pretty much secured the win almost for Fr0zen, but having the burst available is pretty nice. You actually have a live shot of where both players are competing from at Fairfax, Virginia. Can we scout these?
I'm trying to spot them. How close to each other are they? I really want to know.
Someone tell them to wave.
looks like an awesome venue. Loads of players playing around. We just got word that they are actually separated. They're playing in different rooms from each other. So. Yeah.
Amnesiasc's scare tactics won't work at this time.
There you go.
Yeah, but, you know, it does look like a cool event, actually. Plenty of people there as well to hang out with afterwards beforehand, so that was kind of cool. But this series off to a great start, to be honest. The Volk Potion was huge, but also, you know, combined with the fact that Amnesiasc kind of had just a bit of a stuttering start. Didn't get off quite as quick as he would want to.
Yeah, and I want to talk again a little bit about Amnesiasc's lineup, because surprising, after the lineup did so well, it was actually a small percentage who brought it to Europe last week, and then a disproportionate amount actually started to get high in the Swiss and move through, so the lineup was overperforming. Now it's the most popular lineup, and there's only one player that's made it through to the top 8, so you can argue that it's underperforming. And we haven't seen the whole story because we don't see every game, but from the games that we've seen, it's been the aggro rogue that's potentially been struggling a little bit in some of the matchups.
Yeah, I think it's always dangerous when a deck is so new to play it into a tournament this soon, that, you know, where it's not as if you can get, oh, you know, if the deck wins once or twice, that gets me through a few rounds. It's like, well, no, this is Swiss, you need to get through 7. You know, the deck needs to consistently perform, and I have no doubt these guys have practiced it quite a lot, but it is still definitely not a tried and tested deck quite yet. But we are going to be moving on to game 2, of course. Amnesiasc locking in that rogue again that we've been talking about so much, and Fr0zen now flicking over to his other Reno deck, which is the Reno Lock.
And Fr0zen just seems to have a special connection with Kazakus at this point. It's coming to him in every form that he can have it. Opening hand for the Mage, opening hand for the Warlock, bonus Kazakus off the Cabal Courier. He'll be in great shape if he keeps this up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we saw last time the power of one Volcanic Potion, and you can do similar things with Kazakus, right? It's just a little bit later on, so one sweep, and often the Rogue is in a bit of a rough position as long as Fr0zen isn't too low on health. So far, though, he's got a lot of answers, actually, so Fr0zen's probably feeling pretty good. Now just looking for that Reno as the emergency button.
Yeah, Amnesiasc's hand looking very, very solid as well, though, for this matchup. He's got the kind of chunky mid-game that you want. The big mid-game minions is one of the big things that Reno Lock struggles to answer effectively. You know, turns 4 through 6 are kind of awkward in terms of...
It can normally answer 1, right?
And exactly. And just the fact that it's double Pillager while he also has the Edwin in hand, of course, gives him potential for a big explosive turn with that Edwin Van Cleef later on. And you see Fr0zen's record as well. Also 5-2. That loss to Amnesiasc earlier that we talked about, also losing to Tare, who is another player in this top 8. So many players in this top 8 have interacted with each other previously throughout the Swiss.
Yeah, and also the strength of Amnesiasc's performance, even though Fr0zen lost, would have helped Fr0zen in terms of tiebreakers.
Exactly.
So that's kind of an interesting interaction to see. The Doomsayer does go off, and it was pretty important, I feel, that he got that Doomsayer off and it wasn't answered too easily. But something that me and you discussed yesterday was the importance of a lack of sap in this Rogue deck means that you can't make those like, actually just back away for a turn and then let me do more things play. But there goes the Kazakus for a 5 mana.
Yeah, it was a great play from Fr0zen. Generally, this is the turn where you want to drop Doomsayer against Rogue. Normally, it's because of the threat of Sap that you want to do it early, where Sap doesn't become too punishing for you. But going into their turn 4, you block the Pillager turn. That's a big deal. And then from the other side, with the free tempo that Fr0zen got from the Doomsayer going off, he was able to land that Kazakus for free, essentially, on an empty board. Now, the Reno pickup. Fr0zen is looking like a real potential reversal of fortunes from the past series against Amnesiasc.
This looks incredible for Fr0zen right now. Look at the hand from left to right. We see Coil, Power Overwhelming's nice, but Demon Wrath, Shadow Bolt, Abyssal Enforcer for a little bit later on. All answers. And then there's the recovery phase, or recovery section of the hand, with Ring Farseer, Bran, the Potion, and now Reno. It's pretty much going to line up where I'll deal with all your stuff, and then I will just not die, and you'll run out of stuff yourself. So Fr0zen's put himself in a very good spot. This hand is absolutely amazing, and I feel the onus is on Amnesiasc now to make something big happen.
It absolutely is, and it's a patches draw again from Amnesiasc, but Fr0zen just decided that in light of just nothing really to do this turn, he might as well just take that stabilization now with the Bran and the Ring Farseer. It gets him a little bit on board, so he can potentially take a couple of trades into minions over the next 2 turns, set up that Abyssal Enforcer. That's a big deal. Some people might be looking at this as well, saying, okay, well, why is he wasting healing now? Like, he has Reno in hand. But the longer he can go without being forced to play Reno is actually just to his benefit. So he's just getting these minions down on board, generating some stats, hoping that he can use this to compete over the next couple of turns. But he's going to have to compete with a much larger minion than he might have been expecting.
Yeah, there's a lot of intricacies to playing a Reno lock deck, and it's one Fr0zen is a huge fan of. We actually have some words from him about the Reno lists and Reno lock specifically.
Well, right now, my favorite deck is Reno Lock because how smooth I feel like it plays in terms of being able to beat both aggressive and control decks.
Yeah, flexibility is definitely something that a lot of players value in terms of decks, and we did just see there the Potion get dropped now, so it's cleared it off, and developed the Demon, which can help challenge the Van Cleef here, just to try and bounce back this Van Cleef and then carry on with the sort of dominant hand that Fr0zen's got at the moment.
Yeah, it's a fine line between flexibility and inconsistency when it comes to Reno decks, because as Fr0zen said, yeah, you can beat aggro and control, that's great, but sometimes you do just hit the wrong half of your deck that you want for the other matchup, and that's where you can run into problems. But Fr0zen, very accomplished player of these control Reno decks, and he's able to find his way out of situations where he does get the wrong part of his deck. Like we saw in the previous game, he had a handful of 7 drops up against an aggro deck, was able to fight his way out of it.
Yeah, and we see again the flexibility, or as you said, inconsistency of the deck can actually work in your favor if the stars do align. And Fr0zen now starting to pile through all the answer cards he had on the left side of his hand. And now he's pretty safe, because any damage he takes at this point, he's almost certain will not kill him. And he has Reno as a safety switch there. And again, it's Shaku getting the
Reliquary Seeker.
Teamwork.
There you go.
He's not really the best card he's looking for. Even as he's probably playing the version of Rogue that has the highest chance of proccing that effect, he is in no position to make that card work. Definitely looking for something way more powerful for the Shaku steal there, and definitely just not going to be good enough at this point. Fr0zen even has the healing from the Mistress mixers, so he's just ultra safe at this point.
And from Amnesiac's perspective, that's the big problem. Our caster vision knows what the real big problem is, which is that annoying little explorer in the bottom right of Fr0zen's hand. But from Amnesiac's perspective, he could look at this and say, okay, 13, I have Leroy in my hand, I have SI7 in my hand, that takes him down to 11, start poking away with the dagger, he's down to 10, he's down to 9 when I get the second swing in, then just Leroy plus 1 more source of damage will end the game. But Amnesiasc has the information that Mistress is there, which immediately ruins that equation. It means 1 more source of damage will not be enough after this turn to end the game. But now Amnesiasc is going to learn what the rest of us have known for a while, which is that Reno Jackson is in hand, and now life has just got much, much more difficult for the young Savage.
And just a small nod to a play earlier, Amnesiasc used the SI7 agent to go face, And you might think, oh, well, there's Mistress of Mixtures there. Why wouldn't you use the 2 damage on that minion? But it's because you always know Fr0zen is going to make that trade for you. So there's no point really dropping the damage in there. You could have used it to like guard the minion's health a little bit. But I think at that point, Amnesiasc just wanted to push as hard as possible.
Yeah, I think so too. He just decided he probably wasn't going to beat the Reno. No point in playing around it. Just make the push where he can. And that is a big whiff turn from Amnesiasc. I mean, if you're digging really, really deep for the silver lining here, then he has Leroy Shadowflame in hand. So even after he loses the board, he's got a nice board clear effect. But he is not playing a deck that gives the slightest damn about clearing the opponent's board. That's just not going to help him set up a win condition.
Yeah, and the problem is, as we keep seeing turn after turn, Fr0zen has been able to just almost spam life tap just every single time. If Fr0zen was at a point where he had 2 to 3 cards, Amnesiasc might be like, oh sure, I can clear the board, and then maybe my draws are just better than his, and I can push out the damage. But Fr0zen's still got a full board here, and rocking 6 cards, 7 on his draw as well. So he's, Amnesiasc knows he's got a lot of tools still available to him.
Yep, looks like it might just be a dagger pass turn. It is indeed. Hellfire pickup, bit of a whiff now that Fr0zen has the board so convincingly, but he is pushing through damage, no problem here. And I think we might just see the status quo preserved because there is 9 damage on board. He can push 7 more with Jirax's Power Overwhelming or potentially, yeah, same thing with Hellfire. Exactly, so he's actually not quite set up for lethal yet, but still in a really solid position. And yeah, this is what I was expecting because Fr0zen's perspective here is just, why life tap? Like, Amnesiasc is just sat on a hand of 5 or 6 cards. There's a couple of coins in there. But what if all of those cards are damage and he's just waiting for me to make that one slip up, just go a little bit lower? It's
one of those things where it's like, yeah, you could life tap. Yeah, you could play, maybe even the Abyssal Enforcer if you really wanted to at this point that we can see. But why even think about potentially losing the game to a play like that? Let's just keep it cool, play it safe. And now Fr0zen's board has been wiped by the Shadowflame combo and without using Leroy as well.
Yeah, held on to the Leroy. Just took a little bit of extra damage to the face to clear up the remaining damage on the Reno. Jackson keeps his Leroy in hand as potential Cold Blood activator for Toxins from Zarel as well, if that comes up. He gets the plus damage from that. But Fr0zen straight back in control of the board state. Ooh. And this is going to need to be a very, very special Swashbuckler.
What does it need to be, like Siphon Soul?
So Power Overwhelming picked up. That is definitely damage that can be combined with Leroy, as we have seen in various decks in the past. But now Fr0zen has that endless debate of if he gets pushed to a point where he would need to play Jiraxus, it's all a formality anyway because there's just lethal on the board. And Amnesiasc, the rogue, is going to fall again for him.
This is going to be tough, quite frankly. Like, these 2 games have been so... From our vision, of course, so one-sided, mainly because of big Reno draws, big Kazakus draws. But you've got to be feeling bad as Amnesiasc here. Obviously, he's very experienced, even at his age, can remain extremely focused. But it's definitely going to be difficult when you've just gone 0-2 with a deck quite convincingly. You've not even really been close a lot of the time as well. And, Fr0zen's, just so I don't know if we mentioned this, but it has popped up on screen now and again. Both Shamans are banned as well. So it's going to be Rogue versus Warrior here, and we are going to see Fr0zen's Warrior.
You're excited. I can see it in your eyes.
As long as Finja comes to play, I deem that a good game. I just want to see Finja hit the board, hopefully get an attack in, and then I am happy regardless. I just love that deck.
Yeah, we showed you the clip in the pre-show of the way this exact matchup went down beforehand, or it was the Finja Warrior up against the Rogue. And it was game 1, Fr0zen took it in a heartbeat. Just Finja hit the board. He had a massive turn with War Leaders coming out to buff. Amnesiasc just conceded on the spot. If that repeats, then right now, Fr0zen is going to the Bahamas. And at least for this season, Amnesiasc is going to have to go back to the lab, and his unfinished business is going to have to wait.
Yeah, we'll have more chances out throughout the year, though. This is only the winter season. We have plenty more activity coming up through the rest of the year, but we are going to go straight into game 3 now. Amnesiasc just saying, well, got to win with these decks, going for Rogue again, and he's going to be, of course, Fr0zen's Warrior, as we discussed. In terms of the opening hands, what do you make of these, Sol?
Well, Fr0zen held on to War Axe, which a solid decision for sure. He also threw away War Leader, which makes a ton of sense because War Leader is actually just a really bad card. It's not in your deck because you want to draw it. It's very like Patches in that regard, which is you're only looking to cheat it into play using Finger. So you're sending it back where you can. Picks up the Bluegill, which is a still subpar card, but slightly more flexible in that you can actually use it for removal. It pushes damage immediately, more going for it, but hey, I was talking about cards you don't want to draw. He sent back the War Leader, picked up the Patches.
Yeah, and I've mentioned a lot of this weekend. I love this deck, but there are problems as well. There are downsides. Yeah. I've literally played games where I draw my Murlocs, then drew Finger, and I'm like, well, this isn't going to work out very well. Yeah, exactly. If Finger doesn't get to draw Murlocs, the power of the card just leaps way, way down. So that combined now with cards like Patches with the Pirates, having a weapon, having the Pirates to buff the weapon. There's a lot of interactions you do need to come together with this deck to make it operate at full power. But so far, Fr0zen's just saying, I'm just going to build a huge weapon and punch you in the face. Just choose to play the Murloc, though, the Bluegill. So that's kind of surprising, but I guess with the multiple weapon buffs, with the Patches into the Cultist next turn, Fr0zen's like, this weapon's just never going to break. I'm just going to keep punching you in the face, and we all know that Rogue does not heal.
Yeah, just count your damage. Aggro 101. That's 8 more from the War Axe. That's 12 from the Kor'kron, 13 with Patches. So he does not need too many kindly draws from this position to be able to push over the line. But Amnesiasc picking up a Bloodsail Cultist off the Swashbuckler, which actually does have synergy with his deck due to the weapon class and the pirate package being played. So he can fish himself out a 2/2 dagger now.
Yeah, it's not looking too bad at all. That's a huge taunt in Amnesiasc's hand, which is kind of nuts. And yeah, Fr0zen's going to have to deal with that going forward in the following turns. But we actually do hear from Fr0zen on his thoughts on going face, which, as we can see, his deck excels
is the plan. Yeah.
I think my biggest weakness is knowing how or when to go face and when to not go face with aggressive decks. That's probably the hardest part about playing aggressive decks.
I'm going to blow your mind, guys. Sometimes you don't go face.
It's almost like he knew, because that dilemma right now is exactly what we're staring at. This is a tough decision. Again, count your damage. 15 from that Fiery War Axe. 1 being pushed from the Patches. That's 16. The Kor'kron in hand will represent lethal. The problem now is that takes this turn and then 2 more turns to materialize. So if you do not trade, you are playing against another very aggressive deck. Do they have a faster clock than that on you coming back the other way? Fr0zen decides to bail out here, at least with the Patches. And last minute decision. Last minute decision. A man that struggles to know whether to go face or trade. You saw it right there.
Yeah, and do not get us wrong. We can speak with knowledge of hands, knowledge of everything that's been going on. But that is a very, very difficult decision to make when you're the one on one side of this board. And Cursed Blade is probably not exactly what Amnesiasc wants in this scenario. I feel like his rogue pirates and his cards that generate cards in general have not really been serving him too well in this series overall.
Hey, that Bloodsail Cultist was pretty sick.
Sure.
What he should have done is held on to the Bloodsail Cultist.
Oh, for the Cursed Blade.
Extra Cursed Blade value later on. That was clearly the play. And now this card we failed to mention just yet. There's the 0/7 Taunt potentially coming down here, which adds another layer of complexity to this situation for Fr0zen, because that will be a card that he is in no way accounting for with the face decision.
Yeah, and the key about this card, it does 0 attack, and there's Fr0zen's response, not too happy. And the key is, one, obviously the huge health and the taunt, but also it's only 2 mana.
Yeah.
Like, you can whip that into a turn. If that card was one of the bigger taunt minions, well, that's your whole turn, right, to drop it. So Fr0zen has kind of, some time to really effectively deal with it, whilst Amnesiasc isn't developing the rest of his board. But he actually got away with a pretty strong turn there, and this game might have just flipped on its head with these this kind of pull.
Yeah. Public Defender. I actually completely blanked on the name of it when I saw it appear in
awesome card.
The more you know. 0/7 Taunt for 2 mana comes down, and Fr0zen just looks like he's going to go through it hard way, potentially just using the 2 weapon attacks to make the push. Kor'kron in hand is looking a little bit miserable, like it's not going to get to connect to the face this game. And Amnesiac, yet again, is just going for more warrior cards.
I kind of love... Oh, Mortal Strike is a good one. But I just love the way previously Amnesiac, every time a card is drawn, you just see a hover. Like, let me just double check what that card does.
Right. Amnesiac is, he's talked before about the need to learn smart or to practice smart. He doesn't just grind out hours and hours mindlessly. He focuses, he uses his time efficiently. So there's actually a lot of information about Hearthstone that just kind of isn't, it just never became relevant to him. He doesn't have the encyclopedic knowledge of every card that you see in Arena and all this stuff that other players would. He just knows what he needs to know to get the job done. That's how his practice regime works. Wow, that pickup.
That was pretty good. Deckhand helping get through this taunt, which is pretty key. You mentioned the turn before. Fr0zen's just going to have to use 2 charges or weapon to get through this. Now the Deckhand's made that completely different, and suddenly Amnesiac's on the back foot, but that is potentially a lot of damage.
It is. 4 on board, 5 from the dagger. Leroy would be 11. Too expensive to Shadow Step it. He could Curse Blade to bring it up to 13 or Eviscerate to bring it up to 15, so he is just a little bit short.
Yeah, but can definitely plan, you know, as we've mentioned earlier, how many turns, right? It's all about, well, I do this turn, do this damage next turn, I win. And it's all about working out how much you can take versus how much time you have to kill your opponent. And, you know, this is definitely scary for Amnesiac because there are, I think there are a couple of draws in the deck that could help Fr0zen out here, but Amnesiac being on 5 is actually a big difference here.
Yeah, the Leroy Jenkins and the 2 Arcanite Reapers are the potential outs now for Fr0zen if there's no defensive play being seen. Oh, there's no Leroy, my mistake. For a second, I forgot there were Murlocs in this deck.
Never forget.
Just the double Reaper is the out.
Yeah, he hasn't drawn any of them yet, so, you know, he's got a reasonable chance, but we can see 20 cards left in the deck.
Yep.
That's not odds I would like to take.
I make that somewhere in the region of 1 in 10, Raven.
You know what? This mathematical genius just astounds me every time. So here we go. Ugh, that's not the card, and that's going to be game now.
Yeah, it's good enough because... Oh no, the Shadow Step was used on the previous turn, so that actually removes some of the damage potential. So 3 will go into the taunt. He's at 16, and Amnesiac needs 11 damage from hand to follow this up. Leroy is 6. The South Sea Deckhand Cursed Blade combo could be played, which would make 10 more. I think he's just a little bit short again, unless he sees something I don't.
That old combo. The Cursed Blade, classic. South Sea Deckhand.
Classic.
Yeah. Definitely a combo to get yourself killed more often than not. See what Shaku... This game's been nuts. Shaku puts in work, and there's a Bloodhoof Brave, which I'm pretty sure Amnesiac's pretty happy with as well, because suddenly that makes the Arcanite Reaper not an out, and not even an out over 2 turns, because you have to put 2 attacks into it because it has 6 health. And you just die to the backswing, of course, but still.
Yeah, and importantly, no Mortal Strike in Fr0zen's deck, which means Amnesiac just happily slaps him down to 11 health. The Murloc War Leader finally picked up. As we mentioned, terrible card to draw. Doubly terrible to draw in that situation. And I would love someone to go back through the VOD of that game and tweet at me and tell me exactly how many Warrior cards Amnesiac actually played.
A lot.
Many.
Yes, that's my answer for you. I'm kind of torn on this one. I picked Fr0zen to make it as well, so I'm obviously supporting him in general. But we get to see more Warrior, so I'm pretty good with this, to be honest.
Yeah, and he has 3 shots with the Warrior, which is important because this deck has a real element of just high roll to it, right? Like sometimes you just coin Finger and then the game ends. Like that, if you get that kind of draw, sometimes this deck can just blow the opponent out of the water. He's engineered himself into a position now where he has 3 games to make that happen, and that just gives him great percentages of just having a non-interactive game of Hearthstone that his opponent just has no input in.
Yeah, and it's going to be Amnesiac picking his Mage to go against the Warrior next. Obviously, Amnesiac has to win with all of his decks against this Warrior because that's the way Conquest works. So it's going to be the Tempo Mage versus the Warrior, and I feel like the Water Elemental being the key card here.
Yeah, Water Elemental definitely could be huge, but looks like this, after we are finished with our epic series, you can see there in Santa Ana, California, there is Tare getting ready to play his quarterfinal against Lucas. Tare, of course, one of the absolute veterans of the Hearthstone Championship Tour. He's been at championships, he's been at BlizzCon in 2014, he's back again within 1 game of making it to a seasonal championship.
Yeah, and that 1 game's going to mean everything. Is the winner of these first 4 matches of the day is going to be qualified through to the Bahamas and then continue playing today to actually get, find out America's winter champion as well. So it's not over after this series or after this set of quarterfinals, but the tickets are on the line for this match. So we go into it now, into game 4. As we said earlier, Amnesiasc's Mage is going to be the choice for him next versus Fr0zen's Murloc, Finger, Awesome Pirate, Super Duper Warrior. I think
Super adjective modifier warrior.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
go.
That's the name we're going for.
Amnesiasc does hit the Mana Worm, though. Mana Worm Apprentice, Forgotten Torch, throws the torch. That may have been a borderline keep, but picks up the Mirror Image, which is the absolute stone cold nuts when you come up against Warrior in terms of being able to protect your minions from early weapon attacks.
Yeah, Fr0zen's hand, Finger. This could change everything, honestly. So the way this could happen here is Amnesiasc does have a great start, and a lot of the time, Tempo Mage does snowball, right? It's the power of the deck is the fact that there's one turn that goes off, and you have to sort of engineer that turn if possible, and then you just snowball the power going forward, especially with cards like we can see Violence Portal there in the end is great for that kind of work. But Fr0zen has, depending on the next few turns of draws, of course, he could still draw some of the Murlocs and make Finger pretty terrible, actually. But if that doesn't happen, playing Finger on turn 5, then having the trade combined with a War Leader from hand is one of the most powerful combinations you can do. And that single turn could be the snowball turn for Fr0zen.
Could very well be. Amnesiasc will be thinking about that possibility as well. And him playing Tempo Mage, there are some ways he can potentially interact and shut that down. If he can, going into Fr0zen's turn 5, get a Flame Waker down on the board and say, sorry, if you play Finger into this, I have a great shot at just being able to remove this with random missiles. Arcane missiles as well can help you out in doing that kind of thing. Then suddenly, Fr0zen's play gets disrupted, which is such a powerful tool in Hearthstone to be able to do that. And then Fr0zen would have to think about whether he wants to react to the Flame Waker. Still a long way off, but worth talking about, because I think, as you pointed out, that Finger in hand is going to be a very, very defining card to this matchup, and Amnesiasc has to potentially plan as to how to beat it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we mentioned how powerful the combo is, but it makes the deck more volatile as well. Everything can go wrong if that Finger gets cleared up. Then there's a huge problem for Fr0zen. He's just going to go for the War Axe this turn. He did poke with the weapon previously just to use that durability and then just get the War Axe locked in. As he might have some plans for the next couple of turns coming up that wouldn't allow him to equip it.
So Amnesiasc looking at a very awkward opening here with the Tempo Mage, and he's happy just to slow play for a little while here. He could have gone Mana Worm, Coin Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mirror Image that turn, pushed out a huge board state, a huge Mana Worm, but then what's his follow-up? Even with the Apprentice discount, he doesn't really have anything to play in terms of discounted spells. Didn't have any minions. That Water Elemental wouldn't have been playable because he would have used his coin already. So Amnesiasc just kind of sitting back, and Tempo Mage, despite what the name suggests, quite often does this. It's more like swing turn mage, where they just sit back and just look for one big turn to try and explode onto the board.
Yeah, and that's we mentioned earlier, Water Elemental coming down. Now Amnesiasc's just saying, look, you do have a bit of a board. I'll drop Water Ele. You either have to deal with it, or you will never attack with your weapon ever again in this whole game. But Fr0zen does have the Bluegill to use to boost some extra damage, and could now use the deckhand, or just say, you know what, my weapon can be Fr0zen for a turn. I'm going to clean it off with the weapon and store the sort of burst damage from the deckhand. Do it. I don't mind this.
This is an interesting decision because this kind of limits your ability to protect your War Leader next turn. If another minion comes down, you don't then have the Fiery War Axe charge available to be able to potentially take down another minion. And that has snowball implications for the fact that you're probably just always playing Finger next turn, which then you have your Finger being stealthed in higher stats. It's more protected against potential removal options from Flame Wakers and Arcane Missiles. I think I would have liked to have the Fiery War Axe attack live this turn, but Fr0zen obviously has a plan here. He might just be expecting something different, just living in a completely different world to me.
Because he knew he had to deal with mirror images and then draw upgrades. So
of course.
Do it next.
Oh, how foolish of me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But no, this is definitely risky. I think the idea that Fr0zen may be thinking is that, well, I gain a minion on the board, which then has to be cleaned up, which there's less chance that Finger's going to be cleaned up. But you are right. I feel like the War Axe was maybe more stable, but we are going to see how he deals with this. Finger is dropped, and it is buffed as well, and that buffed health will only go away when the War Leader dies.
Yes.
So you don't really want spread damage on the Finger, because the damage sort of disappears once the buff is lost, unless you have killed Finger specifically.
Yeah, it looks like Amnesiac going to lead out with the Arcane Intellect here. None of those cards that we set up as potentially being crucial for this exact situation are in hand right now. No Arcane Missiles, no Flame Waker. So that Finger is going to live the dream here potentially. And there's just that juicy 0-1 taunt sat on the board that Fr0zen has the free trade into as well to activate Finger's effect.
Should have pinged his own.
I mean,
if he could have. Okay, so now we might see a slightly different line of play. So a lot of interactions can happen here based on what Finger pulls. There's still Sir Finley as well to come out. So that can actually dramatically change. We're going to find out right now. Get him. Okay, so Wall Leader and the Blue Girl is actually the pulls he wants. He didn't want Sir Finley out, which was the one more Murloc that is left in the deck. Now we might see a swing with the War Axe and then into Zos First Mate, into the Cultist, into Upgrade to get like full value from that kind of durability of a weapon. So based off this Finger pull, how do you actually see the rest of this game turning out, Sol?
Yeah, I mean, Fr0zen can just make a huge board here, and Amnesiac basically had two opportunities to check this. The first was to deal with Finger through the random ping effects that we were talking about. That check has been failed. The second check would be to have a copy of Flame Strike in his deck so he can start to tidy this up afterwards. Nope, sorry, not a card he's decided to play.
He didn't plan for the Finger.
Exactly.
That one Finger in the tournament.
But honestly, I'm a big fan. I'm a big advocate of playing Tempo Mage without Flame Strike. I don't think it's a good card in the deck most of the time. Totally agree with Amnesiac's build here. He's just walked into that unfortunate percentage of games where a Flame Strike would be very, very useful to him at some point. It coming up on the next turn, but as we said, Amnesiac percentage-based player. He says a greater percent of the time, Flame Strike is going to be a dead card to me. And yeah, unlike right now when it would be absolutely glorious and cause Amnesiac to leap out of his seat in glee, it's just not there.
No, it's not, and Fr0zen is you know, keeping the draw strong here, dropping a Frothing Berserker, which are extremely high value target. We can see the Balance Portal is going to come down and not a taunt. Fr0zen has all the weapon power he could ever want in the world, and he's actually one off now, right?
He is one off,
So he can just swing with this hook, not even equip the Reaper, and then just go in with the minions. Effectively ignore the Corruptor, who cares at this point if you're Fr0zen. And yeah, he should be feeling pretty good. He's already seen a mirror image as well, and there are two in the deck, so there is a chance that Amnesiac draws mirror image next turn and can create a bit of an awkward situation. Right. And you know, maybe a nod to this is that he's going to equip the Reaper now, put him to 1 and say, if I get Finger ping of any form, I just win.
Yeah, this is correct for a number of reasons, because it actually gives him alternate outs through the only real defensive play Amnesiac has, which is that one mirror image as you were talking about, and it just creates the outs just raw, as you said, because then Sir Finley becomes a straight out in terms of picking up Hunter or Mage. Amnesiac finds no such thing. Fr0zen gets his revenge on the earlier Swiss round. Amnesiac is going to have to wait one more season at least for his revenge moving forward. It's going to be Fr0zen who's going to the Bahamas.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible effort from both of these players. Amnesiac was so close, said he was going to do it and almost got there, but Fr0zen, that guy on your screen, is the one who got the revenge from the Swiss loss. He's going to the Bahamas to play in the Winter Championships, and I have no doubt we'll be seeing his Bahamas boat that he's going to be going on. There we go. So he's going to be fantastically excited about that. He's going to be the second player today that is going to be qualified so far, and we're going to work onto the other two very, very soon. We do, I believe, have Fr0zen on the line for an interview, so I believe he... can he hear me, Fr0zen? No. No, he can't. We are getting him. We'll have him very, very soon. So, you know, Amnesiac isn't going to be able to face Pavel here in the championships like he wanted. He almost did it, and if he did it, I would have been, my mind would have been blown. It's not often someone rocks up and says, hey, I'm going to just play through this, I'm going to qualify, I'm going to get to championships. It's just going to happen, guys. He was one match off, and it was a relatively close match as well. He'd already had like one series up on Fr0zen in the Swiss stage, but coming so close.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to do, really. Amnesiac kind of set himself up as the villain for this piece and just, you know, say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm the best. I'm going to qualify. I'm going to crush you all. This story is about me. It's not about anyone else. And, you know, you've got to give kudos to the guy to go out and put his neck on the line, and he's done that historically as well. He said, these are the things that I'm going to achieve when I put my mind to it. This time he just fell a little bit short, but let's not focus on the negatives. Let's talk about the great positive the fact that Fr0zen, the man who is now joining us, is going to be heading to the Bahamas. Fr0zen, how you feeling, man?
Feeling amazing. This is incredible.
Yeah, so it's a little bit lost for words. Just, I don't blame you having just come off that match. So having lost to Amnesiasc in the Swiss portion of the tournament, were you confident going into this as like a rematch? Did you just reevaluate what had happened and thought you were going to be good going in, or were you feeling a little bit unsure of yourself?
I'm pretty confident. I think the big point is just getting a win out of the Reno mage. I think that's the weakest part of my lineup, and I think the weakest part of his lineup was his rogue, which really showed during the series. Yeah, he was really unfortunate that he drew patches 2 times. I drew it once, so I mean, overall, I think it's really unfortunate that we queued into each other for this top 8. I think he really deserves to make it. He played probably some of the best games this weekend.
Yeah, it's really great performances from both of you. And my next question is going to be about a certain deck you've brought to this tournament, which I'm very happy about. The Water Warrior, Finja Warrior, whatever anyone wants to call it. So why did you choose to bring this deck? Because it is a very sort of new style, and there was literally only you who decided to actually bring it to this tournament. So why was that?
Well, first of all, thanks to my practice partner Purple for the last day. We pretty much brought the exact same lineup card for card except for the Warrior deck. At first, he proposed the deck, and he was gonna bring it first. Like I was encouraging him not to bring it, and then we queued in each other, and he beat me like probably 10-2, and then he decided that for some reason it wasn't consistent enough. But I saw like it really made sense because. For our lineup, we prioritize the Beneath the Grounds Rogue deck as our first ban, and then post that, we have the Warrior versus against a standard lineup Shaman, which Finja really shines in, and then we have Warrior versus the Mirror, which it's usually about value later on, and the swing from Finja is ridiculous in those matchups. And then versus Reno decks, it's a little bit weaker, but sometimes it can help you kill them post-Reno if they don't have the necessary AoE.
Yeah, so final question. You'll see, we're a bit lost for words earlier on, but how special does this feel for you, and how much more special is it made that you're heading off to such an incredible destination like the Bahamas?
Yeah, I really want to, honestly, a lot of the important for this win for me was post-NA versus CN. I was disappointed at the loss to the CN players, and I think that I played a lot better than a lot of them, and definitely should have beat them, and I really, really want to beat them in the Bahamas. That would make it really amazing.
There you go. Who needs Amnesiasc? He wants revenge on Pavel. Fr0zen's going there instead. He wants revenge on the Chinese players.
Yeah, on China.
Yeah, just on China as a region.
He's up to him. But a huge congratulations again, Fr0zen. We'll let you go and prepare for your next match to go on to potentially become the champion. So good luck with that, and we'll see you later, no doubt.
Well played, man.
Thank you.
And now we can check out all the players that Bahamas bound so far. We have a total of 6 across the 2 regions. So for Europe, we have Pavel, the world champion, Green Sheep, Stanudashi, and Nyria that we saw last weekend. And this weekend from the Americas so far, we saw Darkbone earlier on qualify, and then just come off the back of Fr0zen versus Amnesiasc, with Fr0zen taking the win.
Yeah, Fr0zen, a great addition to the America side of the book there, but still a little bit of work needs to be done before they catch up to the power of our European representatives.
They will never catch up.
Potential to add another big name to that list. Tare coming up very soon, one of the most storied players in HCT history.
Yeah, huge history for him, and he's always just felt a little bit short at the key moments in like deep into the tournaments, but the fact that he's just back and back and back again is absolutely huge. So that's going to be coming up next, and bringing you that match is going to be our good